Just a quick heads up with the fireside chat with David Baity. Craig, our recording bot, crashed somewhere in the middle of the interview, so we lost about 10 minutes of it. I do apologize. Can't get it back. I got to figure out some way to prevent shite like this from happening in the future. But in any case, it's an excellent time with David. I got to do it more often. He's a great person to hang out with, and his Dark Trails Kickstarter has a few days left as I record this. Check it out on Kickstarter. Hello, and welcome to the Tavern Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR, and this is a fireside chat. We have none other than David Baity, who has an excellent Kickstarter going on right now. Dark Trails. David, welcome.
Thanks, man. Pour me another.
Well, you know, it is a tavern, right? Regretfully, it's a bring your own booze tavern. But Joe the lawyer has been pushing me to do like a tavern con or a pub con. So I do have a nice local pub. I might be able to do that, but we'll see.
I was going to say that. It sounds like that has some promise. That's how all of them get started, and just in little spots like that.
Yeah, no. So Joe's been pushing it. I don't blame him because we both like to drink. But hey, as I mentioned right before the show, we're gonna, I'm gonna ask 5 questions that I pretty much ask everybody, and we're gonna start out with the really basic one. What was your first experience with role playing games? How did you get into the hobby?
Oh man, I think it was 1977, and
Wow.
I'm an old fart, but a neighborhood kid who I became really good friends with actually introduced me to it, and I'm trying to think what edition we started with. It's been so long ago. We had the hardback books, I know that.
Okay.
But it just kind of started from there. From there, I think the first box that I actually bought was the red box, and I think that was sometime later. But I've just been playing ever since. Hell, I don't know how old I was when I was 1977. I was probably 9 or 10 or something close to that. So I've always been throwing dice ever since, in one rule system or another. I've gone from D&D to Gamma World to Marvel superheroes to the old World of Darkness when we were all dressed in black, and I didn't LARP though. I didn't LARP. So
well, all right. So you kept your gamer card. You didn't have to relinquish it at any point because of inadvertent LARPing exposure. Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, I kind of know the answer to this, I think. But what's your go-to RPG system these days?
These days it's DCC. We have dabbled a little here and there. We've played some of Diogo's games. We've played some Savage Worlds, Deadlands, but for the most part with me, when it comes to running, I pretty much stick to DCC because I think it's burned in my brain. So it's just obviously, something that you're overly familiar with. It's easier to run. You can focus more on the story and the what's going on with the players, and not have to worry so much about the rules. We have dabbled a little bit in 5e. That's not my gig, but I play, and it's nice to have somebody to to run while you're trying to get your project work done and get it completed. So we're in a little bit of everything.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so now you've played some Redbox. So what's your opinion on race as class?
It's funny before DCC. I think I just kind of fell into the last game that I ran seriously for any amount of time before DCC was Pathfinder, and Jesus Christ, the crunch. After I kind of got tired of bringing like 30 pounds of books to the table, but before that, I don't know, I didn't really like races class, and when I first started playing DCC, it kind of bugged me a little bit, but now I think I dig it. So I think I've kind of come back to the fold, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And, DCC does have race as class. It certainly it comes full circle. DCC is, when I first read the beta for DCC, I didn't like it. I really did not like the system. And then the final game came out, and it was damn near magical, because I felt like I was experiencing the thrill of learning D&D for the first time. Now, I like the system, never learned it enough to run it really proficiently, but my gaming group did not like it, because for the most part, they didn't like the variability of the spells.
Yeah, I
And
get
I can
that.
understand it. Yeah. So, but I own so many DCC adventures for the DCC RPG. I just run them with Swords and Wizardry rules.
Oh,
Convert
yeah.
the Fly. The adventures are so well written.
I feel
Really,
like
I
that's one of
cannot.
the strong points is definitely the authors, right? I mean, you got Harley and Michael Curtis. They're just, I don't know, they're top notch. But I agree with you. When I first played DCC, I couldn't stand it. If you think about it, we went from almost 2 years of Pathfinder, and I had maybe an 8th level character. So we went from that to playing a funnel.
Yep.
My surviving character was, I think, a gong farmer. So, we're trying to figure out what class to play after the funnel. And I was just like, this sucks. I don't want to play this. So a couple months later, I don't know why, I picked the book back up and actually read it. And I don't know. I guess I was hooked from that point on.
Fair enough. I like that. Like I said, it certainly, in my mind, plays better than it reads, because it's such a large book. It's intimidating.
Yeah.
But once you start playing it, you realize that, I don't know, 80% of the pages are charts.
Right.
They're just there for you to refer to. They're not there to be part of the I don't know, minute to minute gameplay.
Yeah. The bulk of it spells.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so next question: save or die, not the podcast, but save or die as a game mechanic. Where do you fall on that? Like it, dislike it?
I like it. I feel like that we've kind of steered away from having that encounter where you realize if you screw up, you're done. When you face, I guess, the reality of losing your character in an encounter, it gets real serious.
Oh yeah.
And those were things I think that you get with the old school, the OSR that I had growing up that I kind of forgot about. And I think a lot of new folks that are playing 5e, as their introductory game, or some of the other games, it seems like, and I get it, I understand why. If you spend a year developing a character and then all of a sudden they die, it can be a bit of a downer. But I miss that because I think that it sharpens I don't know, it really pulls you into that encounter. It makes you think and it makes you cautious. And I like that element, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and I think that for me, uh, save or die works best not as like a random trap in a hallway, but it works best when it's protecting that main treasure, or it's part of that like final encounter, or one of those big encounters when your party's expecting, like, shit's gonna hit the fan. Oh, by the way, we curse on this. We curse. Please. I was a cop. I was a cop for 20 fucking years. If I don't curse on a
And I'm
podcast,
a
it's a problem.
firefighter, still firefighting, so fuck it. Okay.
Yeah, you see. But I just I like the mechanic because it makes people, at least their characters, vulnerable, and it's good for the players to realize that you might be super powerful in a lot of ways, but you can still die with a single die roll. That's great. I just don't think it should be. I was walking down the
Yeah.
hallway and this save or die trap hit me. Regular traps, fine. Whittle away at you, and maybe you're fucked up enough that it will be a save or die, because those 2d6 damage can kill you. But I just don't. I mean, a really good save or die trap, that should be protecting something important
I
or
totally
part of
agree. I
it.
mean, when you walk into a room and you face that beholder down, you know that one of those tentacles is going to throw a disintegrator out. And I think that knowing that, I don't know, it makes everything about that encounter that much more intense. And I just think
Yep.
that it sharpens you as a player to kind of stay in the encounter and try not to get fried.
Yeah, you got to play smart. You know, and sometimes your group gets lazy, and they play lazy. They phone it in, and that certainly is a great way to wake them up. To tell you the truth, I hate to be like that.
Yeah, there's definitely not enough depth in a lot of the new games. And DCC can kind of be like that. Sometimes it's hard for me to kill players, but I think that's just because I roll shit.
Oh, okay. Then you're like Tim Shorts from Gothard's Manor when he's a player. All he can do is roll fucking ones. Then as
Yeah.
a DM, he rolls like 18s and above nearly all the time. That's like, I'll kill you. But all right, so let's go on to the final question before we start this hex crawl. You came into gaming around 10 years old.
Yeah.
That 10-year-old you, as the dog goes crazy. All right, she is an amazing watchdog. If you don't need to have anything beyond like a doorbell, sets her off, so you never have to worry about it. Phone sets her off. She'll hear my wife from like a block and a half away and tell me mommy's coming. But in any case, that 10-year-old you who came into gaming and had their eyes opened, what would that 10-year-old you think of if they could see you now, I don't know, 40 odd years later, and what you're doing, what you've accomplished in the hobby?
Oh man. I never thought that I would be writing and making money at it, to be honest with you. And it's still kind of hard to believe, but just yesterday I received uh, a digital still of the painting that San Julian did. And, I can remember seeing his magazines when I was a little kid, going into the little corner mart, the Eerie and the Creepy and the Vampirella. His covers were just amazing. And I've always kind of loved him. So, he sent me, like I said, a sample of the cover that I had painted. And you just sit there and you look at it. And then I think you kind of realize you're like, man, this is really awesome, because to be that young and get into the gaming, not the gaming scene, but to start playing and still have comics and magazines and horror, and it just, and you kind of grow with it, and it never quite leaves you. And then all of a sudden here you are, on this big project, and here's this legend of an artist who sends you a cover for your game, and it's humbling, and it's just, it's a rare feeling, that I can't say that I've had a lot in life. There's a sentimental aspect to it, and it's just awesome.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you probably had the as an answer for that question. I've obviously heard dozens of different ones, and your answer is it's almost humbling, because I know exactly the feeling of going from, you started nearly 40 years ago, and now look what you're doing. And you're like, how did I ever get here? Would the old me ever dreamed of this?
Oh, I wouldn't have.
No, and it's probably the hardest of the 5 questions for most people to answer, because not many of us go back and compare who and what we were when we came into this hobby as a kid or a young teen, or
Yeah.
and then where we are now, because I talk with creators and I talk with artists, and to see, what has happened over time to put you where you are. For us, it's a gradual process where we got. But when you look back, you're like, damn, I covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's a couple of months to Deadlands, and
Okay.
with Deadlands, I kind of took it and adapted it to Dark Trails, the world of Dark Trails, and it worked fine. But I think everybody started missing some of the mechanics with DCC, and we started missing the way classes are. So we took a couple of weeks off, and I just hammered out some cool classes, and we went back at it, and the group loved it. So from there, we played, I don't know, a couple of months, and it seemed to be going really well. And That was probably around the end of 2015, because 2016 is when I actually wrote to Eric and Carl, and I wanted to make sure that, I wasn't going to ruffle any feathers by doing Dark Trails. And one of the things I told them was I didn't want to do a fanzine. I wanted it to be a complete game, that it would come out as a book, to hopefully, at the time, I just assumed that they would still be, pumping out zines, but
Right.
it has since kind of died. But so they were cool with it, and I talked to Joseph about it. And one of the things I asked Joseph, which was really cool, was for him to actually let me do, was to actually include, the core rules in the game, because up to that point, any third party publications, they don't include the DCC rules for whatever reason. And I think Joseph's response to that question was, "You're grandfathered in." So he's always been. I can't say enough about Joseph Goodman. He's just such a super guy, and he's always taking good care of me. So he was like, "Yeah, go ahead." So from that point on, it just kind of got rolling, and it's gathered steam, and it's gone from 2016 GaryCon to now, to where people can't get in the games. So it's a good, like I said, it's that humbling thing. When you post an event and a couple of days later you look and it's filled, that says something about the system and the game, and how you run things. So to get back to your question, I just think that I feel like that it's just a different take on the Weird West. I don't think that someone who plays Deadlands will play Dark Trails and think, this is a hack, this is a copy. I think that they'll see it as something unique, and I'm really excited about that. There's some new mechanics in it that even branch away from DCC that I think lend themselves to a Weird West kind of game. So
Right.
I'm really excited. I hope that, the folks that are back in the Kickstarter, I hope when they get the book that they really dig it.
Now, what are the future plans then for Dark Trails?
To get the book out for starters.
Well, all right. All right. Admittedly, that's a given. But for listen, it's a successful Kickstarter. It is doing very well.
Yeah, it
So
is.
I'm assuming there's going to be follow-up content to it.
Yeah, I don't want to do splat books. I kind of want to follow Joseph's model. I want to find people who can make some good adventures, and I want to give them a shot at some Dark Trail stuff. There's already, as crazy as it is, just in the last year, there's 3 or 4 folks who have already wrote, for the most part, adventures for Dark Trails, and I think that's really cool, considering it's not even out yet.
Wow.
So I think the ideal thing would be to pump out some good adventures through the year. The only thing I've really thought about, which may or may not happen, is kind of a almost like a hex crawl, where you take a state or a territory and
Right.
actually develop it and throw in a little some fiction. Pete Spahn, Operation White Box, has been writing some really, really cool Dark Trails stuff to kind of get into the whole feel of things. He's doing some stretch goals, but I think combining a little fiction with some territories with specific encounters for that state, maybe throwing some a new class possibly, or some new creatures, I think it would kind of be a good addition to the game. But I don't want to, obviously, I don't want to follow the model of certain companies where they just put out book after book after book. I don't want to kill people with that.
You don't want to do the AD&D second edition complete series of handbooks, like one for each class, 128 page. No, okay.
Some of those handbooks I really did like, but I think it did kind of get a little out of hand towards the end there. But even like Pathfinder, look at how many books that they have. It's insane, and they're great material. They really are. But after a while, you just kind of get, I don't know. I just got tired of lugging books around. I went to that one DCC book, which is about 5 pounds. It's heavy enough to club somebody into unconsciousness with, but it's a very liberating thing to go from a system where you've got to keep up with so much to a system where there's one book with some really great adventures that lets you, I don't know, you kind of, I think you're a little more sharp on the mechanics and the rules when it's that way. You don't have to have a lot to keep up with.
Well, you're talking about Pathfinder and the amount of books, and the whole reason they're probably rebooting Pathfinder to Pathfinder 2 is that they have that rules bloat going on, and you need to really sell those core books. So how do you get people to buy core books again? You reboot the system, which allows you to reboot all those flat books in the end anyway.
Yeah, I haven't read through just very, very minor sections that a few folks have sent me for I guess the reboot, but it seems like they're going a little bit more towards 5e. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. But
I've heard the same, is that they're going towards 5e while still trying to keep a lot of the complexity of the Pathfinder numbers. And I don't think that that's really you got your peanut butter in my chocolate. It sounds like more like you got your toothpaste in my caramel type of deal. It's two different worlds.
it'll be interesting to see what the hardcore Pathfinder folks, what they do, if they'll stick with it or if they'll just keep playing their old edition.
And one other thing that I remember with Pathfinder was when they first announced it, they said there was going to be a compatibility between Pathfinder 2 and Pathfinder 1, and they've seemed to have stepped away from that statement. I don't know if they've totally killed it, but it reminds me of when they were making D&D Next, and a certain game designer, Monty Cook, was talking about, he's going to have it modular so you can have your OD&D character with your 2e character, with your 4e character. All the different editions can play well together. I remember that. I blogged about it. I was like, this is, if it theoretically, I guess it could work. I just don't know how, I don't know how it actually worked well. Yeah, the power levels of these different game editions is, so different. And then shortly afterwards, Monty Cook left. Sorry, Monty cooked. Monty Cook left, and then next went in a totally different direction.
Yeah, but I mean, it's I can't really say anything about 5e. I enjoy playing it, and you ask what maybe in the future. I don't know that there's not a Weird West for 5e. So if the game comes out and it does really well, I'm not opposed to trying to come up with something for 5e for Dark Trails. I think it's such a colorful setting, and the character classes are, I think, when people get a good feel for them and they get to really experience the game, that they'll really love the character classes. And it may be something that would port over pretty well.
Listen, in all honesty, I'm a big OSR guy, but the reason why the OSR is even viable is because of 5e.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Rising tide has lifted all ships, and as somebody who's worked the Frog God table at, the major OSR cons like Game Hall, which has a huge 5e presence, Gary Con, which has probably even a huger 5e presence because you have a whole level of the convention area running 5e, and which is the coast is a sponsor, major funder of Gary Con. I can tell you that 5e allows companies like Frog God Games to still produce OSR material. It would be impossible, I think, to have a company with as many people and moving parts as like Frog God Games if you were taking that into account. And Frog God's not the only company doing that. Troll Lord Games now is converting all their stuff to 5e.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, I think it's the whole Edition Wars thing. I mean, you've got people that really kind of, I don't know, they get heated up about that stuff. But I think the more the merrier. I think it just overall, it just kind of strengthens the genre. Not the genre, but it just kind of it solidifies a lot of things. And I think that whether it's 5e or you're playing one of the old editions, it's all good, I think.
Well, yeah, because a lot of it is, the style of your play. You can certainly play an old school game with a new school mentality of how you're going to go through it. And you can certainly take 5e and change very minor things like the healing and such, and certainly make it more old school, make it more deadly.
Yeah,
A lot of it is what your group expects from the game and how you run it.
exactly. And I think every group's got their little quirks and things that they like and things that they don't. And I think a good judge or DM, I think he plays on that, and he may steal a nugget or two from 5e, or if he's playing 5e, he may bring some rules that he's he thinks work really well for his group. And I think that's just, I don't know. I think that's just going to happen with any good judge or DM. So
Yeah, and DMing. There's certainly some talent that you're inborn with, but it's a lot of it is skill. You can learn to be a good DM. It just takes time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I can remember. It's funny because when I was young, we played when we first started playing. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. I can remember my neighbor had like a room with like 10 dragons in it, and we thought hit dice was hit points. We didn't know what the hell we were
Oh, whoa,
doing.
whoa, whoa, wait a second. You thought that hit dice were hit points too?
I was a little kid. I didn't know any better, and I guess he hadn't read the rules. But yeah, I mean, so
Oh,
we
that's
would just
that's
go through it.
awesome.
Yeah,
I feel
we
better
like
now.
we just totally demolished these dungeons. So, you
Oh,
know,
good.
I
Yeah.
I can remember, and of course, eventually we figured it out. But I can remember being in a gaming store, and the first guy who was like the dungeon master that just totally wowed me. His descriptives and his attention to detail. I mean, he was just the best uh, dungeon master that I had had up to that point. And I can remember going, asking, and him inviting me to play. And I had this first level mage with like 2 hit points. And the group that I played with, they had been around for a while. I think they were probably third or fourth level, and it came down to my little wizard who had cast his spell, and I think it was like one last orc, and we were in like hand-to-hand combat, and that combat went, it seems like an hour, and all the guys around me were like, "You got to kill this guy," and then I'd fumble or I'd miss, and then the orc would miss, and it just went on, and these guys were just, they were so stressed because they thought their characters were going to die, and it goes back to that whole save or die thing, there was that element of we're going to lose. Oh shit, this little pissant player who came to play with us is going to get us killed. But that started about a 10-year run. His name's Joe McCall, and most of the things that I think, if you play in one of my sessions and you like my style of play, you know most of that came from being a player at his table for several years. You pick up things, and I think it's awesome when you sit down at a table, whether it's at a con or whatever, and there's a judge or a dungeon master or whatever you want to call him, and he brings something new to the table, and you're like, holy shit, this is awesome. I'm gonna adapt this. I'm gonna steal this from you to make my
Right.
game.
Nice, man. That's what gaming is about, though. Right? You steal the best. You know, whether it's for your personal, hopefully it's for your personal use, not for your commercial use.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't mean material. I just meant
No,
like
I not.
style of play.
But again, we've all heard of the stories of people stealing good ideas for commercial use.
Oh yeah,
But when it comes to gaming as a DM, I steal from everywhere from my personal account. Oh my god, I don't run very much as written. I but I do run pieces as written from different sources.
yeah.
It's just more fun that way, and it keeps your players on their toes. You gotta keep them from getting too relaxed in what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always cool to throw something new into the mix.
Yeah. Now, the idea of Dark Trails for 5e, that's pretty interesting. I do, not being a 5e player myself, I would certainly back that Kickstarter because I have found, was it Miss Garther is one of the the hacks of 5e that's self-contained,
Hmm.
and it's a version of 5e that I could see myself running because it is. And I know 5e is not very rules heavy compared to like Pathfinder, but it's certainly a lighter rule set that is more toward my sensibilities, I guess, and while still keeping to the 5e mechanics and I could see a Dark Trails 5e doing very well.
Well, I mean, I'm open for, any system that yeah, I think you've got people who just they like their game. They like this particular game. They like this particular system. And I totally get that. I mean, they may not want to try something new. So, but I do think that like I said, the story and the classes that you'll find in Dark Trails, I think that it would be something that a lot of people would dig. So if it takes, putting it to a different system to get more people into the game, I think I think it's a good thing to do.
Well, like I said, a lot of companies, like Frog Guy Games, everything that it releases now is 5e and Swords and Wizardry.
Yeah.
So, and I, think it works fine. North Texas, we surprisingly sold a lot of Swords and Wizardry for a system that you would think most of the people who would want those products already own it because it is a very old school con.
Yeah.
I was happy to see that we did good business with Swords and Wizardry. But 5e, it's where the money is. If you want to retire as a firefighter early, maybe you have to do the 5e version.
Well, actually, I retired when I was 42, Eric. I just took 2 weeks off and went back to work because you can't live off of my pension.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I got to figure something
Yeah.
out. I got to find another day job here sooner or later because firefighting is definitely a young man's game, and I'm officially an old fart as of this year.
Oh, wait, you turned 50 this year?
Yep, I try not to think about
I turned 52 next month. Believe me.
it. Isn't
I
it great
understand it.
waking up and it hurt to breathe? That's just a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's just like, oh, geez. 50. Now, of course, when I was a teenager, 50 was like old man status. You got one foot in the grave. It no longer feels quite that bad. But yeah, I could see it. I could see where that could go. I'm glad that I was able to retire just short of my 49th birthday. Came on a job at 20. But
It's funny you mentioned getting old because at North Texas Con I was in the elevator with there was some teenagers and I was wearing a Don Knotts Ferratu t-shirt, which is kind of cool.
nice.
And this young girl, she looks and she says, "Nice t-shirt." And I was like, "You know who Don Knotts is?" She says, "No, I'm 20 years old."
Oh, jeez. You don't know who Don Knotts is?
Yeah, so I went in my room and threw a big wet one in the pillow. It was a very tearful moment for me, but hey, that lets you know, hey, I'm officially an old fart.
Yeah. Oh God. I guess we would have. I guess we would be the second generation of grognards then for the OSR. The first generation is up there in their upper 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
I guess we start shuffling into that now. So God help us. Oh
Where's
no,
the
man,
alternative?
this was fun, man. This is and sadly, this is the most we've got to sit down and actually talk. We don't get a chance to
Yeah, I
talk.
know. It's always in passing, and I'm always like, I come home and I'm like, damn it, I wanted to talk to Eric more. So, yeah, this is awesome, man. I'm really glad we got to chat a little bit.
Definitely. Well, we're gonna have to bring you back because this is fun, and you know, we like doing fireside chats. This is
This was a
relaxing.
blast.
I'm glad, and because of your fame, we actually had like a significant live audience, and we'll probably have an even better not so live audience when the
I wouldn't
podcast
say
goes up
fame. I
on
would
time.
say notoriety.
Ah, uh, you're famously notorious. How about that? Maybe.
Yeah, I like that. I'll take that.
Very cool. Well, the Kickstarter is Dark Trails. This podcast is going to be going up on Wednesday, June 12th, probably as I'm doing the Tavern Chat Hangout. You got a couple of days to back it. So when you're hearing this, you're probably in that 3 to 2 day range. Back it. It's good shit, man. Looks awesome. And I happen to have ideas already to drag in some spaghetti western flicks into it and see what I can write up for a little home campaign. So
And
you got me psyched.
you'll definitely get this book before you get Far West.
Listen, you'll probably be laying me out in a coffin from old age before I get Far West.
Yeah, yeah.
And Gareth, if you want to punch me in the throat, you actually got to show up at conventions to even find me. So I'm not hiding. Not that Gareth is going to listen to this unless he
Probably.
hears his name. Well, then again, if he hears his name was mentioned, he's like Candyman. He might just have to show up. Or he'll twit about it. That's it. He'll just twit about it because that's where most of his writing goes out. In, 180 characters a shot, whatever the limit is.
Oh man.
Yes, folks. I'm around pretty much every day doing the podcast, so it's like a Catskills comedy show from the 50s. Boy, my arm's tired. Yes, done. That's human that David and I get, but you youngins, sorry, man, we can't help you. Pex is young. Pex isn't even 30 yet. Man, I might have to translate that joke for my younger brother. But David, this was literally, it was awesome. A great time. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, you take care, man. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. As always, folks, God bless, be safe, roll those dice, roll them well, and we'll be back tomorrow. And yes, Pex is an 80s. Yes. And what can I tell you, man? He's got that stamina of youth. I don't have it. I was in bed almost every day before, like, I don't know, 1:30, 1. Damn Pex staying up till like the sun came up. All right, folks. We'll catch you later. Bye now.